Raphael, I'm really excited to be speaking to you today because you've done some amazing things, particularly when it comes to getting people organized for business. And that's a very hard thing to do. Where did you first get this idea to start up a community or an event or things like that for businesses? Where did this come from and why did you decide to do it?
Sure. The UK Black Business Show it started in 2017. I had been working in the corporate world, the sales world for quite a long time, and in particular, I was working on a show called the UK Investor Show. So I was selling on that show, big show. We had a huge financial bank exhibiting, and attendees from across the world would literally kind of travel down to the venue to see and buy some of the products and services. And so during the day there was speaking going on, there was workshops, etc. And it was something which I really enjoyed being a part of. But it also kind of dawned on me as well, speaking to some of my peers, that actually there wasn't an event for the Black community on that kind of magnitude, but also one that was one of excellence as well. So it was something which I wanted to pretty much replicate. So the UK Black Business Show takes place at the exact same venue that the UK Investor Show was taking place in, at the Queen Elizabeth, opposite the House of Parliament, Westminster Abbey. The reason it's there is because I didn't want to go cheap. I wanted to get a building which showed that we could be in the same spaces as some of the huge white-owned businesses, huge financial banks. So that's kind of where it all started. And the whole idea was to just create a platform to inspire and connect, Black business owners and professionals in various industries. So we have, from fashion to hair and beauty to, legal services to tech, any sort of business, they can come to the UK Black Business Show. But as well as that, it's a chance for you to come and be inspired as well. So even me, myself, growing up, a lot of my Black role models were, musicians, sports players. But, now obviously we've got a lot more, access to role models, but it's a chance for you to come and be inspired by some of the leading Black professionals within the UK and the community. So it's, really just kind of twofold, a chance for you to sell your products as well. It's probably a space where, unlike any other space throughout the year, you can go in and predominantly there's Black people there. And when I say predominantly, I mean an event with, over 1,000 people, which has predominantly Black people. There's not many kind of events like that in the UK. So it's, really a special event, really, really special event. And that's, pretty much how it came to, how it was created.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. You just reminded me of when I was a kid. You'd watch TV and you always want to become what you can see. So I would see Will Smith on the TV and be like, oh man, when I grow up, I want to be exactly like him. He's tall, he's goofy, he's got big ears and stuff like that. But you touched on something which is very important, which is you wanted to highlight people beyond sports entertainment where Black people are shown quite a bit, So in terms of having role models that were business leaders, did you have any as a kid? And did you think that there were enough for you growing up? Growing up, I had role models that were in sports and entertainment, much like Will Smith and people like that, but never business leaders that were Black that I could look up to per se. There were few and far between. Did you have any Black business leaders that you looked up to as a kid and things like that?
That's exactly one of the reasons I created it, because no, not really. I didn't have many Black business leaders, but the few that I can remember are the people like Levi Roots. Was one of the first kind of Black entrepreneurs, business people that I saw, really doing great things on TV, being on Dragon's Den, etc., and kind of just branching out into all these different entrepreneurial brands that he created. So I didn't really have many. A lot of those were like the Alan Sugars, the Richard Bransons, were my business role models. And as much as they're still kind of great business role models, it's always great to have role models that reflect you, that represent, how you look, because it makes you feel like you can make it as well. So that's the importance of the UK Black Business Show. And yeah, that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. I'm interested to find out more about you as a person, because for you to take on such an undertaking, man, you got to have some confidence, man. You got to think, I can be the person to bring 1,000 Black businesses together, because there's a need, but that I'm capable of doing this. Where did you get that sense of confidence from, especially since you didn't have many Black business leaders to look up to? And what were you nervous about when you decided to kick this off?
I think 100% when you kick off anything, you're fairly nervous about doing things. I actually started setting up music and comedy events prior to the UK Black Business Show, actually.
Oh, really?
So I used to run a show called Music and Banter, which basically mixed, upcoming musicians with some of the well-known comedians. So the people who are popular now, like Mo Gilligan, Mo the comedian, Kojo, A. comedian, KG the comedian, they all perform regularly at my shows. So I kind of already was in the event space, and that kind of, gave me the confidence to know that I can put on an event. But yeah, I think it was nervy at the start. I obviously did ask for advice on what to do, but I planned it well. And I honestly think I'm probably the best person in a position to be able to set it up at that time with, some of the connections that I had already made. And being able to, I was working for an exhibition company as well. So I knew how to do it. I knew how to make it excellent as well, and not just, something that was kind of not something that was quickly put together, but something which just showed excellence for the Black community.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. You always want to show or put your best foot forward, because we know that typically you can have a sort of mark against you being Black, that, it's not going to be done well, or things are going to be late. I can imagine when you first start, set it up. I don't know if you know this sort of common colloquialism about like African time, people show up 2 hours late and, be chilling, that kind of thing. Did you have to overcome some of those barriers when you were trying to, get serious about this, in terms of either logistics or misconceptions or things that were out there?
Yeah. That's what I mean. We actually had people phone up the venue to see if the show was real, if it was really taking place. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest, you can, I'm sure if it was another show, people wouldn't be doing that. Yeah. But people were looking at the website. The website looked amazing. The venue looked incredible. And people were phoning up, is this really happening? A Black business show? So that's one of the kind of the earliest memories that I could remember of, some of the challenges that I faced in just even getting buy-in from the Black community. But yeah, I mean, for us, it's about, trying to do things as well on time at the show, making sure things aren't running late. I mean, that happens at all shows, but, us as Black people, we can do things to time, we can do excellent things. So, of course, we try to make sure our show is, extremely high quality in everything we do.
I don't know if you've noticed that there is more of a Black economic unit in America. So they have things like the United Negro College Fund and things like that. But even there is sometimes this dog-eat-dog mentality where Black people don't come together to create that sort of Black Wall Street and things like that. In America, they've had a bit more success. But here in the UK, honestly, I was quite surprised when I first came to see that there wasn't a sort of Black economic unit. And the first time I thought about it was when I actually came to the Black Business Show. Someone invited me and they were like, hey, check this out. And I went there and I was amazed. And I thought, man, why don't we have more of this? And then over the next two or 3 years, more has come out of it. But why do you think there is that sort of dog eat dog, not a sort of we're all in this together mentality within the Black business community? Or do you think that that's not true, that we do have more cohesiveness than people think?
I completely hear both sides. Firstly, I think America is so much bigger, and there's a lot more Black people as well. And also the black American struggle is completely different to the black UK struggle as well at the same time.
Really?
They've gone through their history that they've gone through is completely different to ours in terms of like the slavery aspect as well. So I think that whole, that history of, going through that has made them, want to kind of come together a bit more, quicker and unite more. But in the UK, obviously, we don't have that kind of history of the huge oppression, although it's something that's very close to our hearts as well. And it affected, everyone globally. That also is, that's something that the Americans, the black Americans had to deal with. In terms of, a community, I think the community is getting stronger. There are a lot of kind of black organisations that have been created, especially after, the death of George Floyd. A lot has been coming out. But there are definitely great kind of organisations. I work with a number of organisations, and there's no point in doing what I do and not connecting with other organisations, or it doesn't make sense. The whole idea is to create more black businesses, to help them grow, to inspire the younger generation. So I think there definitely is a unity. It's growing. It's not as strong as I think this year. It's got a lot stronger because of kind of things that have gone on with like Black Lives Matter, etc. But it could be a lot stronger. So I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of that question.
Yeah, no, it's one of the first things that I observed when I came over here. But everything has to start from somewhere, man. And then next thing you know, a couple of years later, then there's this whole economic ecosystem. One thing I do get worried about, though, is a lot of times I see people creating things that I don't think are as high a value add, and I'll be specific. So for instance, you'll see someone creating sort of another hair salon, or maybe solving for things that are only specific to our community. But really the future is in the Amazons of the world. It's in creating the next payment system. It's all that kind of stuff. Do you see, well, actually more specifically, why do you think there's a lack of sort of black tech forward driven companies? Or maybe is that just my perception and my reality that we're only creating low value types of businesses?
Yeah, I think of recent, there has been a shift away from, before, like some of the most popular businesses for black businesses were, fashion, hair and beauty,
restaurants,
and food. And we noticed that in terms of the growth of the UK Black Business Show from 2017 to 2020. We've seen the development of, other industries creeping in. So tech industry has been creeping in 2019 to 2020. Services like the legal services, business services, that's been creeping in. But those are just things that, that are very much kind of aligned to black culture, if you think about it. Hair and beauty, regardless of how rich or poor you are, ladies need to get their hair done. The guys need to get their trim. Yeah, that's it. The guys need to get their trims done. In terms of food, that's part of our culture as black people. Christmas time, dinner time, sitting around with a family. Whether you're African, you're Caribbean, or from any country, food is an important part of the black community. And then, of course, fashion, where just black people are known to be actually probably, we actually set trends in terms of, fashion. A lot of the things that are popular today is because, the black community also, endorse things like that. And we actually spend a lot of our money on those products, which are not necessarily black owned.
Exactly.
So we support a lot of these fashion brands in business, like we're huge consumers. So I think that's where the problem was. It was just that all of these things are aligned so tightly to our community. So it's so easy for us to be like, oh, I want to do that as well. But now what we are seeing is some great people kind of creating amazing tech brands and legal services, and because actually we need all of these services. Actually, it's important that we have people in all of these different industries, because because we can't just rely on a few industries to be able to make a difference. So I don't know if I've gone off on one.
No, man, that's great. In fact, you actually made me think about something. I don't know why, but it seems like we always romanticize something that isn't our own. When I was in America, you know, they would romanticize Gucci or, you know, all those kinds of brands which aren't ours. In Botswana and Nigeria, where I grew up, you know, some guys would try and drive American cars, or they would try and, you know, speak with, when you hear, you know, a black African guy saying, you know, the N-word, and it's like, guy, we don't say that here. Like, oh, you know what you're doing, that kind of thing. But it's almost romanticizing something that's foreign. Do you think that comes from an inferiority complex, that we think others have it better, or like Gucci's better and our own brands are not as good? Or where do you think that stems from?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I wouldn't really put to that kind of thinking in that mind frame, but I would just say, you know, if we want to wear nice things, we want to wear popular things, and, you know, unless it's kind of endorsed by, you know, and got huge kind of name behind it or branding, we're kind of very unlikely to wear it. So obviously when people are creating things like P. Diddy's brand, like his Bad Boy label, I think it was the Sean John, that was popular for a moment. I think Jay-Z created his own brand. So there has been a time where we've actually bought into black-owned brands. But I think it's just the whole popular culture that, you know, black people tend to buy into. But actually, we drive popular culture so much so that, you know, if we actually work together, we could have, you know, our own huge brand like Gucci and everyone's buying it. But yeah, I think that's my thought on it. Just the kind of, we just love the popular culture.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to Gucci by Raphael coming out next year. Yeah, man. I was thinking about the fact that what you mentioned as well, we have this creativity, we have this energy, you know, we have this hustle, we have all these things, but somehow we don't translate that into the business side of things. And it just made me think about how we don't think about equity as much as maybe other races, cultures, societies, or whatever it is. So getting people to think like business owners, you know, the typical thing in an African household is going to be an engineer or lawyer or doctor, that kind of thing. You hardly hear go and start a business, you know, it's a bit out of the realm. But equity, ownership, business, you know, owning your own business platform or things like that. Do you think that it's the result of a lack of education, or how do you think we can get people to think like equity owners, like they have a stake in something, you know, like they belong to it? Because that's something that you're doing well at the Black Business Show. But in general, how do we get people to think like equity owners? You know what I mean? Instead of employees, instead of not a subservient manner, but thinking like a business, thinking of themselves as a business, thinking of professionalizing this creativity that they have. Just, you know, not just being the musician, but being, as you mentioned, the Diddy, right? The actual business guy, the guy that makes the deals, the contracts, making whatever it is you're doing into a business and having ownership. How do you think we can cultivate that mentality a bit more?
I think it's about, one thing that I talked about before is, you know, representation and role models as well. We need to have people who are mentors to us who can advise us on that. We need to be able to, you know, read the right books, have access to the right knowledge, because a lot of people are doing businesses that they could easily scale up, but they just don't know where to start. They don't know, you know, who to reach out to. They don't know, you know, what are the best options in terms of either, you know, getting a loan or either getting investment. So I think it's just that knowledge, that lack of knowledge at the moment. And it's something which, you know, I think, you know, I haven't thought of how it can be done, but there needs to be some sort of platform where black businesses can educate themselves on finance, marketing, etc. So I think that's it. We just need to kind of get access to the right pool of knowledge to be able to start to think, to be able to think like proper business owners, not just that you set up an Instagram page, you set up a Facebook, you know. It's, you know, but actually, okay, have you trademarked your stuff? Have you done all this? Have you, you know? But yeah,
Man, you're gonna get a flood of comments saying, "What? My Instagram business is not a real business." What are you saying, Raphael? Nah, I'm sure they'll be fine. But yeah, you touched on some key points there. Are there any books that you read that changed the course or trajectory or of your life, or particular people that you met that changed, how your life went? Because there are always those few lucky, fortuitous moments in life that you're like, wow, that was instrumental. Do you have any of those?
You know what? I probably have, but I can't think of it right now. I didn't read, to be honest, in terms of books. I haven't read many books, but I've gotten advice off a lot of people, like just in nuggets over the years. So can't really kind of think of it. But I have a lot of books in my house that I kind of just dip in and out for knowledge. But I can't kind of narrow it down to one. But I just get books on all different things, so like finance, marketing, anything. Just any business book, especially by Black entrepreneurs. I'll probably buy it and read about it.
What do you think makes Black entrepreneurs different from other types of entrepreneurs, if anything at all?
The difference is that what they've gone through to get the success. There's a lot of, so for example, you may be familiar with the term like code switching. For a professional, how when we go with Black people, we go into certain environments, we have to kind of change the way we maybe even talk and the way we act, and we're changing that because we want to adapt in, the white working world, and, the working world is a white world. So when you see a successful Black entrepreneur, they've gone through at some point code switching, probably at some point they've gone through imposter syndrome, feeling that even though you're in a space, feeling that you're not worthy of being in that space. And that's something that actually probably all Black people get at some point, but even more Black women actually get it the most in terms of imposter syndrome. We've probably been through at some point maybe some sort of microaggression, where, someone said something to us, about, intentionally or in that, do you know what I mean? Or at some point we've gone through, an unconscious bias where we've been denied funding because of our name, or they haven't looked at our CV, although it's the same as, John Smith's CV. They haven't looked at it because of, the African surname. So when I see a Black entrepreneur, I know that they've dealt with all of those things and they've still made a success out of their career. So that's for me, that's the difference between when I see a Black entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I sometimes struggle with the whole victim mentality versus sort of taking personal responsibility and ownership, because it's hard to tell when things are happening to you because you're Black, and then also having that mentality of, man, the world is against me, it's tougher for me to get things done, all that kind of stuff. Some people don't rise above it, right? They take in that negative energy and they never see themselves becoming something successful. So that line between being a victim, but then also knowing you have the power to change your circumstances, how do you straddle that? Because I struggle with it, to be very frank with you, and I'm sure many of our audience and people struggle with it, but not letting, how do you contextualize the fact that your life is harder because you are Black, and overcoming that? Does it mean you just have to have tougher skin than most people? How do you manage that fine balance?
Yeah, I don't think Black people get, I don't really see the kind of victim mentality. I just see it as, I'm writing a book at the moment, actually. So I'm writing a book which has been released in the UK and US in June 2021, nice. Which is called Twice as Hard, and that talks about the notion that we do have to work twice as hard as not to get as, I wouldn't say twice as hard to get half as much, but we have to work harder because of some of the reasons that I mentioned to yourself, the microaggressions, the imposter syndrome, the code switching. So in terms of victim mentality, I don't think that's something which, Black people, I still don't think it's something that Black people do. I think generally we do go through stuff, and I think that whole phrase has been created by, you know, someone else to kind of brush aside some of our comments and some of the things that we go through. So I'm not really a fan of it. Not really a fan of you know, that victim mentality, because actually there has been a lot of things that we have gone through. There is a lot of things in history that has prevented, you know, black progression in the UK and the US. You know, so yeah, I think it's about just kind of focusing on yourself as well at the same time, getting the right knowledge. You can still be excellent. It is going to be harder, but you can still kind of, you know, thrive in whatever you do.
Yeah, no, I hope so. The goal is to ensure that most people are on the other side, right? Thinking that things are tough and you can overcome it at some point. But yeah, not discounting the fact that things are harder and you might have to go through a bit of a tougher time compared to others. But, you know, as part of the organization that you formed, I imagine you needed a lot of partners, right? And you've partnered with some great companies and organizers and things like that. What was that experience like, trying to actually get allies, partners, sponsors? Was it all smooth sailing? What was the toughest part that you encountered as part of that?
Toughest part, obviously, you know, building a brand for yourself. I think now, after 3 years, we've worked with JP Morgan, Accenture, Goldman Sachs, BT, Facebook. They've all been sponsored. They've all sponsored some of my shows in some sort of capacity. But it's definitely kind of about building your brand first, making sure it's credible, you know, executing, but also having longevity as well. You know, these companies want to see that you've been running for X long. They want to see that you've been able to, you know, put on a good show, etc. So after you've done that, that's when you can start to kind of, you know, build your name within the industry.
So yeah, you mentioned longevity actually, so we can kind of wrap up around this point. But speaking about the mid to long term, what's your goal and how can people help you achieve that goal?
In terms of my goal, I would just say, you know, to make sure that we can increase, just to get as many black-owned businesses across the country as possible in the same space, you know. We want it to just be some sort of kind of ridiculous amount of black-owned businesses. You can't even get around it for the full day. You know, thousands and thousands of people, but also have an impact on the black, you know, economy, not just for one day, but throughout the year as well. We want to, you know, bring some of the best speakers from across the country down as well. So I think, yeah, that's the goal for us. To just make it bigger and better and have some sort of lasting impact for the black community.
No, that's great. Just to sort of wrap up as well, I typically ask people, what are the 3 words that people typically use to describe you? And you always get very interesting answers, and I've asked some of the other prominent guests as well, but I wanted to ask you to sort of close up. What are 3 words that people usually use to describe you?
I would say calm. No, I'll say relax, ambitious, relaxed, ambitious, and
fashionable.
Fashionable.
Like I mentioned, that Gucci lineup is coming out, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, relaxed, ambitious, and focused.
Focus.
Yeah, focus. Or entrepreneurial. Relaxed, ambitious, and entrepreneurial.
Nice. Yeah, I think focus is key. That's something I learned later on in my career. You can't do anything without focus, but it seems like you're starting to branch out a little bit now. I mean, you're writing a book and doing all these other things in a couple of years' time, man. Don't forget us when you make it.
Yeah, no way.
Awesome, man. Thanks.